Greetings, y'all. My name is Lenjo Kilo, follower of the Most High God and our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Today, I wanted to speak on a very important topic, the topic of Christmas and why you should never celebrate it again. Um, Growing up, in the church, you never really think about why they bring a tree inside the church on December 25th. You ask yourself, you know, was Christ really born on this day? What do all the decorations mean? What does the star on top of the tree mean? What does the mistletoe mean? What do the candles mean? All those things that uh, I grew up asking myself, and I didn't really know the answers to. Until I really took it upon myself to research, and I find out what those things meant. And I wanted to offer you guys an opportunity to, listen and find out the origin so you can make your own conscious decision whether or not you want to continue to celebrate Christmas or to change your ways. Now, I have two pieces of literature that were, monumental in my research. And the first is the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. This is the number one Bible dictionary in the world. I recommend anyone that is looking to increase their faith or looking to increase their understanding to definitely purchase this. It has almost all the words in the Bible defined for you, and this was also something that I use a great amount during my research. The second book is The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. This book was written in 1853. Alexander Hislop was a senior minister at the Free Church of Scotland, and he wrote this book to, you know, speak about the truth concerning the Roman Catholic Church and how their paganistic ways infiltrated Christianity during the time of Constantine. Okay, so now we're on page 85 of the Two Babylons. I'm going to put it up on the screen for you all to follow along while I'm reading.
The feasts of Rome are innumerable, but five of the most important may be singled out for elucidation, viz., Christmas Day, Lady Day, Easter, the Nativity of St. John, and the Feast of Assumption. Each and all of these can be proved to be Babylonian. And first, as to the festival in honor of the birth of Christ, or Christmas. How come it is that this festival was connected with the 25th of December? There is not a word in the scriptures about the precise day of his birth or the time of the year he was born. What is recorded there implies that at what times soever his birth took place, it could not have been on the 25th of December.
So, what he's talking about here is he's posing the question on how come December 25th is used as a day to represent Christ's birth. And he also says that they are all connected back to Babylonian customs. Now, those that are familiar with their Bibles know that the Babylonians captured the southern region of Israel, being the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And during that capture, they imposed their customs onto the Israelites. And one of these customs is Christmas, also known as the Saturnalia. Now, December 25th is a significant day in Babylonian custom because to them that represents the beginning of time. That represents the beginning of civilization, also known as the winter solstice, where this at this time is the shortest. The days are short and the nights are long, and on December 25th, that is when the day is at its shortest and its night at the longest. And every day from that date, the days get longer. So in their custom, that represents the birth of the sun moving and gaining dominion over the night. And from this observation of the winter solstice, plenty of other paganistic customs created deities to be a representative of this day. You have the Egyptian god of Horus, who was born on the winter solstice of December 25th. You have the Greek god Helios, which is born on the winter solstice of December 25th. You also have the Roman god Apollo, which is born on the winter solstice of December 25th, and the Hindu god Mithra, that was born on December 25th, as well as Belial, named after Nimrod, after he was killed by his mother Neairimus, and then he was reincarnated into the sun god. He was also born on December 25th. Now, as you can see, December 25th has historically been a pagan day to worship false gods. And these paganistic customs have found their way through Christianity because of the Babylonian takeover in Israel. Now let's continue forward in the Two Babylons book. We are still on page 85. At that time, the angel announced his birth to the shepherds of Bethlehem. They were feeding their flocks by night in the open fields. Now, no doubt the climate of Palestine is not so severe as the climate of this country. But even there, though the heat of day be considerable, the cold of night from December to February is very piercing. And it was not the custom of the shepherds of Judea to watch their flocks in the open fields later than about the end of October. Now remember, Christ was born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem was inside of the Roman province called Judea. Now, it was against Judean customs to tend your flocks after October because of the climate was so severe. Now, December 25th is in the dead of winter. So no shepherd, no one in their right mind, even today in America, would graze and tend sheep in the winter. That's just not what you do. And in those times, that was against customs. And you never go against customs. Now remember, also during the time of Christ's birth, Joseph and Mary, they had to pay taxes. Now Rome had set up different tax stations throughout the land of Israel for the Israelites to pay taxes to them. Now remember, during the wintertime, we did not have, they did not have many forms of transportation. So they didn't have cars, they didn't have airplanes, trains. They had their feet and the backs of their horses. Now in the wintertime, traveling is almost impossible. So during the Judean times and Roman times, paying taxes in the winter was not required. So if you're referencing your Bible, in the Bible, this is Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. Just based on that fact alone, Christ's birthday cannot have been in December because the winters were too harsh. So the story says that the angel came while they were tending their flocks. They're not tending their flocks in the winter. It also says that Joseph and Mary went to go pay taxes. They're not walking in the dead of winter to go pay taxes. Why? Because it was not required to pay taxes in the winter because, as they knew, no one would be able to make it on time because of the harsh weather conditions. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and go into our Bible dictionaries and look up the word Christmas. Now this is page 108 of the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. And it reads, Christmas, the anniversary of the birth of Christ and its observance, celebrated by most Protestants and by Roman Catholics on December 25th, by Eastern Orthodox churches on January 6th, and by the Armenian Church on January 19th. The first mention of its observance on December 25th is in the time of Constantine, about AD 325. The date of the birth of Christ is not known. So, the first mention of Christmas came during the time of Constantine. Now, Constantine was a pagan himself, and he used Christianity and paganism, combined them together in order to gain more power within Rome. Now, we'll touch on that subject a little bit later. Now, let's get back into the Two Babylons. Now we are on page 86. Now we're going to fast forward into page 86 of the Two Babylons, and it reads, How then did the Romish Church fix on this December 25th as Christmas Day?
Why, thus, long before the 4th century and long before the Christian era itself, a festival was celebrated among the heathen at that precise time of the year, in honor of the birth of the son of the Babylonian queen of heaven. And it may be fairly presumed that in order to conciliate the heathen and to swell the number of nominal adherents of Christianity, the same festival was adopted by the Roman Church, giving it only the name of Christ. This tendency on the part of Christians to meet paganism halfway was very early developed.
So what is it saying here on page 86? It is saying that a festival that was long before the Christian era meaning while Christ was here and after his death. So there was a festival long before the Christian era that the Babylonians celebrated, and that being the Saturnalia. Now, the Saturnalia was one of the largest festivals and holidays of the Babylonian times. And during those times, it was a time of gift giving, song singing, and unfortunately a time where orgies were accepted among the masses. Now, this being one of the biggest Babylonian holidays, found its way into Christianity because they wanted to swell the number of adherents to Christianity. So Constantine realized that the Roman Empire is losing power and they need to find a way to gain more power. So they created this paganistic Christianity, accepting the Saturnalia and all of its paganistic customs, combining it with Christianity and trying to swell his number of followers. Now, during that early time, a lot of pagans were, against going and following Christian rules because it was against what they were used to. Now, this is where Christians was created. He said, okay, I'm going to let you guys keep your holidays and keep what you do, but I'm going to throw the name Christ on it just so that it can be acceptable to both sides. Now, we can make a reference within our Bibles, within Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 18, where he speaks against following these customs and speaks against following this quote-unquote Queen of Heaven. Now, remember that when Babylon had took over the southern region of Israel, Judah and Benjamin, they were trying to force their customs among the people. And this is where Jeremiah speaks against them, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, do not fall to these customs because they're not of God. But over time, as the Babylonians gained strength, because of their power, they changed the hearts of many of God's people, and they in turn started to follow those customs. Now let's jump back into the two Babylons, same page 86, and see what else is said.
And we find Tertullian, even in this day, about the year 230, bitterly lamenting the inconsistency of the disciples of Christ in this respect, and contrasting it with the strict fidelity of the pagans to their own superstition. By us, says he, who are strangers to the Sabbaths and new moons and festivals once acceptable to God, the Saturnalia, the Feast of January, the Brumalia, the Matronalia are now frequented. Gifts are carried to and from. New Year's Day presents are made with din, and sports and banquets are celebrated with uproar. Oh, how much more faithful are the heathen to their religion, who take special care to adopt no solemnity of the Christians.
Like I said, once Babylon continued to gain power, they overturned the hearts of many of the people of Israel, God's people, and because of this, only a small remnant remained that stuck true to the laws and statutes of God. But because it was such a small number, they were overtaken and their voices were drowned out by the loud voices of Babylon. Now, that was in the year 230 AD. Now we can fast forward to 325 AD during the time of Constantine. Now remember, by that time of Constantine, Christianity had already been infiltrated with paganism. But also, these pagans, like it said, they participated with nothing of the Christians, nothing of the people of Israel. And when the Babylonian Empire was losing its power, Constantine had tried to fight desperately to maintain the structure of Babylon and the structure of Rome. And he did this by taking those pagan customs and applying it into Christianity in order to please both sides of the heathen and of the Israelite or the newly Christians, because Christians have nothing to do with the Saturnalia or any of those pagan customs. Now with this, anyone that opposed to follow his new form of pagan Christianity, whether it be a pagan themselves or Israelites, they were done away with. They were killed or enslaved. Now that fast forward, that ties into today, where a lot of people look down on Christianity because of its origins of Constantine, when in reality Constantine, he created his own doctrine and misconstrued the word so that people that try to follow Christ will follow the pagan customs and not the customs of Christ. That's why we have Christmas worldwide within every church. People are not following God's laws, but they think that because Christ came and died for us, that the laws are done away with. Those kind of doctrines are what was created during the time of Constantine. So when someone tells you to wake up and say, "Oh no, Christianity was used as a tool for slavery," in turn, they are correct, but it's not the Christianity that is of God. That is the Christianity that is of Constantine, and that is totally misconstrued. Now we're going to go back into 2 Babylons, page 87, and get more context into this winter solstice and this Christmas day.
It reads, "The time of the year and the ceremonies in which it is celebrated prove its origin. In Egypt, the son of Isis, the Egyptian title for the Queen of Heaven, was born at this very time, about the time of the winter solstice. The very name by which Christmas is popularly known among ourselves, Yule Day, proves at once its pagan and Babylonian origin."
Now, like I said earlier, that the pagan holiday of Saturnalia, which they celebrate the Queen of Heaven and her son Saturn, the sun god, found its way even into Egypt because remember the Babylonian Empire was so powerful that they took over Egypt and had influence in all of the other surrounding countries. So they took over Israel and had influence all the other surrounding countries, such as Egypt. Now let's continue forward on page 87 and find out a little bit more of what was going on in Egypt.
Yule is the Chaldean name for an infant or little child, and as the 25th of December was called by our pagan Anglo-Saxon ancestors Yule Day or Child's Day, and the night that preceded it Mother Light, long before they came in contact with Christianity. That sufficiently proves its real character. Now, what is its real character? Yes, the Saturnalia, which is a celebration, like I've been saying for a while now, the Saturnalia is a celebration of the Queen of Heaven and her son Saturn. Now, like I said, this influence carried into Egypt, and in Egypt they called it Yule Day, or as Child's Day, as a representation for the Queen of Heaven's son. Yule meaning little child. So the Saturnalia was Yule Day, which was a celebration of the son of the Queen of Heaven, Saturn, also known as the sun god. So people in Babylon were celebrating this holiday way before Christ came on the scene. Now let's try and tie this all together. So Christmas today is known as a celebration of the birth of Christ, right? The Babylonians celebrated the birth of the son of the Queen of Heaven. And because of the Babylonian influence, it came into Egypt as well. And they called that day Yule Day.
just as in other cultures outside of America, they have different names for Christmas. So, the origin of Christmas today stems from the Saturnalia, also known as Yule Day, which is a celebration of the son of the Queen of Heaven, also known as the sun god. Next, I'm going to touch on two of the staples of the Saturnalia culture or Saturnalia custom, which is the Christmas tree and the Christmas candles. We're going to speak about what those really represent. Now we're in the Two Babylons, page 89.
And it reads, "The candles in some parts of England lighted on Christmas Eve and used so long as the festive season lasts, were equally lighted by the pagans on the eve of the festival of the Babylonian god, to do honor to him. For it was one of the distinguishing particularities of this worship to have lighted wax candles on his altars."
Now, this sounds very familiar with how Christmas is celebrated today in churches. People light candles, put it up on altars, and use that as a representation, a quote unquote representation of the birth of God, or the birth of Christ, when in actuality that has nothing to do with it. That is a representation of the birth of Saturn, also known as the sun god. Now, let's move a little bit forward. Now, these customs, they just don't pop up out of nowhere. So when you're sitting down in your church and you see a Christmas tree and you see candles on an altar, ask yourself, what and where did these come from? Now we're going to step a little further in page 89 and read about the Christmas tree, which is probably one of the biggest staples of the Saturnalia holiday. The Christmas tree, now so common among us, was equally common in pagan Rome and pagan Egypt. In Egypt, that tree was the palm tree. In Rome, it was the fir. The palm tree denoting the pagan Messiah as Baal Tamar, the fir referring to him as Baal Berith, the mother of Adonis, the sun god and great mediatorial divinity, was mystically said to have been changed into a tree, and when it came in that state to have brought forth her divine son. Now keep in mind, this same tree that I just read about is also spoken against by Jeremiah during his time. In Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 1 through 4, he speaks against the trees and that worship that was brought upon the Israelites by the Babylonians. Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 1 through 4 reads, "Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not." Now, does that sound familiar to you? The same tree that we read about in Babylon, about in Rome and in Egypt, is the same tree that was placed into Christianity, the same tree that Jeremiah speaks against, is the same tree that represents a false god. One of the main commandments that given to us by the Lord God himself, saying not to worship any idols. So by you putting a tree into your house, that is exactly what you're doing, worshiping an idol. And most of us don't even know that. Before I took it upon myself to research it, I didn't even know it. I would wake up every Christmas excited, look under my tree, and look at what gifts I got, until I hit me and said, where did this even come from? So I'm urging all of you to use that same level of curiosity to learn more about this holiday yourself. Now let's continue forward in the Two Babylons. We're going to go into page 90 and learn a little bit more about the context behind this holiday of Saturnalia.
And it reads, "The Christmas tree, as has been stated, was generally at Rome a different tree, even the fir, but the very same idea as was implied in the palm tree was implied in the Christmas fir, for that covertly symbolized the newborn god as Baal Berith, also known as the Lord of the Covenant, and thus shadowed forth the perpetuity and everlasting everlasting nature of his power, not that after having fallen before his enemies, he had risen triumphant over them all. Therefore, the 25th of December, the day that was observed at Rome as the day when the victorious God reappeared on earth, was held at the Natis Invicti Solis, the birthday of the unconquered sun. Now the Yule-log is the dead stock of Nimrod, defined as the sun god, but cut down by his enemies. The Christmas tree is Nimrod Redivus, the slain god come to life again.
So, like I referenced earlier, this tree is a representative of the sun god. Now, when you take this tree and you put it up into your house, and you put presents under the tree, and you cut up different logs and you put it into the fire. Once you put it into the fire, that represents his reincarnation. So that's one of the main staples in the ritual, that you're burning the fire that is going to raise him up to come into your home, put presents under your tree as a thank you for representing his birth again. So that is exactly what people do now today, celebrating Christmas. They place presents under the tree, and they call it Santa Claus. They say Santa Claus has come down through your chimney and placed presents under your tree, and put coals in the socks, and drinks milk and eats cookies because you were good or nice that year. So I want you to prove it to yourself. Look around. Just look at all the Christmas advertisements, Christmas deals, Christmas movies, Christmas carols, and ask yourself, where is Christ at? Who is Santa Claus? Who is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? What do those people have to do with Christ or his birth? You know, it has come down to a point where now that at the end of November, everyone is hit and is, sensationalized to prepare themselves for this Saturnalia celebration at the end of December. So I wanted you to take it upon yourself to purchase a Zondervan Bible Dictionary, purchase the Two Babylons, and read it for yourselves. That's the main thing in understanding and gaining the truth. It's not just taking it from my mouth, but it's also looking at it and reading it for yourself, because we all have the answer to God individually, as it states in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10. In addition to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, I also encourage you all to read Hebrews 10, verse 26, as it states, "For if we sin willfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins." So I am encouraging you all to take this truth, look at it for yourselves, and act accordingly. Now, as a quick recap, we went over the origin of December 25th, why God is not born on that day, went over the origin of the Saturnalia, and why the Saturnalia was grafted into true Christianity, and how it has taken over things today, and such as the Christmas tree and the candles. Now there are plenty of other things that go into it as well, such as the mistletoe and Santa Claus, and even Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and all those origins. But that's for a later time, later video. But like I said before, I encourage you all to read those verses, purchase these books, and read the truth for yourselves. Now, with that being said, I'm Lenjo Kilo. This is another episode of the ESWC Belief Series. Thank you for watching. Peace.